Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Iron Lady. This is the metal plated mistress you can see on screen right now, and I'd say let's get right into the gameplay. As always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half, and in the latter part of the video I'm going to talk about the perks, mutations and everything else that's noteworthy about the character. So what's this character about? Well, it's a shotgunner. And what we're going to do here is we're making use of VATS crits as much as we can. And we're starting off by killing off this here sentry bot. Well, it's not the best enemy to show off damage, simply because you only need to get one hit in on its fusion cores, and whatever weapon you use, it's basically down at that point. But anyways, we're going to face off more enemies than that. So when it comes to shotguns, they have been hit quite hard by the damage nerf, as it's called. I mean, you do know that it's technically not a damage nerf, but you know what I'm talking about. So this was my take on making a viable shotgunner after patch 22. And while we're here, we're probably going to finish the quest. It wasn't intended for from me, but I stumbled into this event, so let's just do this real quick. And well, back to the topic. When it comes to shotguns, people tend to use magic shotguns. I'm fairly sure you know what I'm talking about when I say that. And especially after the patch 22, a lot of people are under the assumption that the only way to make a viable shotgunner is to use magic ones. The next thing you're going to see quite a lot is that people tend to use explosive shotguns, and while explosive shotguns can be great, the explosive effect alone doesn't make them good. So it's a notable damage increase, but it won't stay on its own. So just let's say a suppressor's explosive shotgun wouldn't quite cut it, if you're honest here. And what I did with this character is I was making use of some advantages that shotguns have. So what are the biggest problems with shotguns? Usually their biggest drawback seems to be that due to the way that its damage is split between multiple pellets, so multiple single shots, they are performing relatively poor when it comes to armor penetration. So we did manage to tackle that problem by using an anti-armor shotgun. And the big strength of shotgun is that with certain perks they perform very well. So the exact same thing that makes them suffer in terms of armor penetration, this split up pellets, can be a great chance to utilize some perks. So what I'm talking about here is the 4-leaf clover perk. For those of you who don't know, the 4-leaf clover perk makes it so basically every time you hit an enemy in VATS, you do have a certain chance to refill your critical meter completely. So usually the perk isn't bad, so honestly it's never a bad choice if you're going for a VATS character, but especially on shotguns it works very well for the simple reason that every single one of these pellets you're shooting has a chance to proc this effect. So in all reality you do have way more chance than just this 15% chance that's advertised in the perk. It's not entirely clear if this is intentional or not, so it seems a bit overpowered. As you can see during the gameplay, basically every second shot we do will be a critical. So here you saw it, first shot we're taking, we instantly refilled our critical meter, and here again. So this can be extremely powerful for us. We don't always need the critical shots, like those guys here go down in a single shot anyways to the head, but especially if you're at a bit of range, have about 45% VATS hit chance, it's a good idea to use a critical, simply to get a safe hit in. Well, as I said, it's not sure if it's intentional, it doesn't seem like it, but Bethesda never really mentioned anything about this, and I think it's safe to assume that this will stay for at least a long time. So Bethesda never really mentioned changes about this perk in regards to shotguns, and I'm not quite sure how they would tackle the problem, if you want to call it a problem at all. Here you can see, by the way, we do perform relatively well if we're using no VATS, but this build really benefits from our VATS crits. So as long as you can afford it in terms of action points, you should definitely go for the VATS headshots. So shotguns suffer from relatively poor range, as you can see here. Even at close range like this, it's not entirely safe to say that we're going to do damage. But I found that very rarely do you encounter enemies that take more than 2 shots, regular shots that is. With crits you can, for the most part, take down enemies in 1 shot. Like, for example, the level 100 super mutants at West Tech, well, they might take more than 2 shots even with criticals, but as your shotgun is a semi-automatic shotgun with an 8-round magazine, that's still not a problem. Ammo is quite cheap to get, honestly. Some people tend to have problems getting plastic, but usually the go-to approach is just use the scrapper perk and scrap down laser rifles and such that you can loot from enemies, and you're safe to go. Especially with all the new ways to make more ammo, like the legendary ammo perk and such, you shouldn't have a problem at all. It's not that bad. Priming the weapon could be a good idea, but I felt like it's not necessary. Another thing to say about the build is there is a lot of potential to get more damage out of it. So you'll see when I go over the build that our special stats are fairly evenly spread. Except for strength, we don't have any stat that's really pumped up at the maximum. So you could arguably take down quite some points from endurance and put them into luck, or, well, 3 more ranks of luck to invest into bloody mess wouldn't be a bad idea or something, but I'm going to talk more about it later on in the video. So another noteworthy thing with this build is that it's basically very similar to my medic shotgunner that I made, and I also carry the medic shotgun on me, so I just don't use it because I want to show off the build with this exact shotgun here. When it comes to shotguns, there's a lot of things that work. As I said, you can use magic shotguns, but I wouldn't recommend doing it, simply because you're getting used to something that's inevitably going to be taken away from you sooner or later. As you saw here, we can take quite some hits. Obviously the most dangerous enemies, so things like these high-level super mutants with their miniguns, they can be a threat to us, but overall we're quite tanky. It's not that big of a problem. One thing you can do with this character is you can easily use power armor. I decided not to, simply to go for the style and have a bit more maneuverability in terms of legendary effects and such, but honestly none of our perks, none of our legendary effects are desperately unique or anything. Like, I think we run with 4 Vanguard's pieces and 1 Autostim piece, so it's not like we desperately need the armor. It could be cool if we had 1 or 2 more pieces of action point refresh. That would definitely help our build. As you can really see, once we're getting out of AP we can get into trouble, but, well, in that case we just have to flee the scenery. It's not that big of a deal. Another great thing about this build is its utility when it comes to boss enemies. So I'm not meaning that we're taking down boss enemies very efficiently. Like, due to the high crit rate we can deal with them pretty successfully. That's not the problem. But we're not having the DPS that a commando or a heavy gunner would have. What our utility is though is that for the same reason the 4-leaf clover perk is so effective that I said earlier. Also the enforcer perk works very well. I'm pretty sure more people know about the enforcer perk. So what it does is it gives you a chance to cripple an enemy, or specifically an enemy's limb on a hit. And same with the VATS crits. Every single pellet in your shotgun counts as a hit. So even though the chance is already quite high, it's getting even higher due to the way that your weapon behaves. Sorry, by the way, was a bit troubled here. I had trouble reloading, so yeah, those gutsies are a pain in the ass. Like, you need a real dedicated tank character to deal with them successfully, so they are always a threat. Back to the topic. What I just said, you're really good at crippling. So what that means is, especially now that the queen is back to its old habits of being crippled, you can cripple her wings easily. Same goes for Scorch Beast, so you can force them to land very effectively. It's also very effective when you're fighting animals like Yaogwai or the Sheep Squatch. So cryptids count too. Take down their legs, and once they're crippled, those guys are basically useless. So that makes it a good choice, a good all-rounder. This character really has nothing that holds it back. So we suffer a bit from the lack of range, but that's basically it. As you saw here, we did manage to take down our enemies very effectively. So, well, it's still a bit dark. I just wanted to take a quick look at her. But yeah, that's it for the gameplay. I'm not sure if I should have shown a Scorch Beast or something, but I really wanted to take the chance with one wasteland to explore different parts of the map, so you don't always have to watch the same area when I'm doing this gameplay reviews. If you feel like it's better to always show off the same route or anything, let me know, but I think you can reasonably tell how well the build does from here on, right? Anyways, now let's get into the build. First and foremost, before I forget it, I will show you the gear. Here we do have our shotgun. It's anti-armor, better VATS crits, and extra damage resistance while reloading. So, all in all, honestly, some people, or a lot of people, would probably script this weapon right off the bat. And it's definitely nothing you would call God tier or anything, but I think especially for shotguns this here does very well. Onto our apparel. As I said earlier, we do have one piece of auto-stim. We do have a sentinel piece. I think we have another one, but we're not really utilizing sentinel. The radiation resistance though is pretty neat. We have urban operative under armor simply for the looks, but it's not modded or anything. If I'd recommend something, I would go for under armor that boosts your agility, so you have more action points to burn. And well, the radar ladders, the road ladders would work very well. Here is the Vanguard Sentinel piece. As I said, Sentinel not really what we're looking for, but well, this here is basically just a Vanguard set. The extra perception is nice, so we can easily get a headshot in, but that's about it. Then a Vanguard Slag with sneak. We're not utilizing that. The extra charisma also not necessary for us. And on the right arm we do have Vanguards, food drink, chem weight reduction, and endurance. So yet again, nothing desperately special. So overall, you do have a lot of freedom with this build in terms of armor. So the best thing you could probably have is AP refresh. But what's nice about this character is that we have a fairly evenly spread resistances. So as you see down there, we do have 294 damage and energy resistance, which is pretty solid, and especially the 177 red resistance are nice. It's not like you can walk through a nuke zone or anything, but you will definitely see that you take less radiation damage. Especially when you're fighting ghouls and such, it's not that big of a problem as it usually would be. Onto our build. As we level up, we can actually use that here to finish the build like I intended it, with another rank of glow sight. Exactly, ranked it up to 3. There it goes, and now let's talk about the build. 15 strength, shouldn't be a surprise here. Honestly, 12 would be enough if you can afford to not use bandolier. But what we want to use is 3 ranks of shotgunner and where is it? Scatter shot. So our shotguns way less, but we're mostly interested in the faster reload. Bandolier and blocker. Well, bandolier was necessary for me to carry my stuff, and blocker I just put in so because I had the point left. But as I said earlier, you can easily go down to 12 strength and just use those 4 perks here. If you can afford not to use bandolier. Blocker isn't necessary that much, so you could use those 3 perk points in agility or something. Perception, I try to keep it fairly high. I even have ranked it 1 level up with legendary perception, simply because our character really lives from VATS headshots, and ideally I would have liked the the eagle eyes mutation, but I couldn't find it anywhere in the vendor and I couldn't craft it, and it wasn't that necessary. But boost your perception as far as you can, like getting those safe headshots in just spares you a little ammo. And it can be beneficial if you're going against more enemies. Obviously losing out on a shot means you're just wasted some AP, which isn't optimal. So while not necessary, do something with perception, trust me. So what I did here was skeet shooter. This one is actually necessary. Like, these 3 ranks are definitely necessary. So is concentrated fire, rank 1, simply so we can target the head. And what I did with those leftover perks is I used glow sight. For some reason I feel like glowing enemies got a bit tougher with the update, let's say that way. So I have a feeling that they have a bigger health pool nowadays, and well, it's just extra damage to glowing enemies. It's a perk you see every now and then. It can be beneficial, and it doesn't hurt you to have this extra perception, as I said. Endurance of, well, 6 is fairly low, but we're making good use out of it with adamantium skeleton and fireproof. Those are pretty standard perks when it comes to endurance and you're not in power armor. So especially adamantium skeleton, we want to be on the move, and especially if we're getting crowded or anything, we want to jump around and flee the enemies to regain a bit of our action points. So adamantium skeleton, really good choice here. And fireproof, well, if you have a dense chest piece you don't really need it, but that's up to you here. On to charisma. This is an absolute standard for charisma with Lone Wanderer rank 4, nothing special here. Intelligence, so gunsmith rank 5, I do advise to use it with shotguns as they tend to break quite quickly. And batteries included, well, you can go for anything here. You can even go down to 5 intelligence and just use gunsmith. I just used it because I had to. So convenience pure, do whatever you like here. Agility, it's at 9, which is fairly well in the middle somewhere. So usually you tend to see higher agility levels with builds. It's never a bad choice. If you have leftover perks, always put them in agility. You're never going wrong with that. But this was enough for our purposes. So action boy, marathoner, and enforcer. Action Girl and Marathoner, those are just there to make us more efficient with our action points. Marathoner, for a similar reason than we have Adamantium Skeleton, we want to be on the move. So if we encounter enemies, we want to sprint up to them so we are in range to use our shotgun, but on the same hand, once we're near enough, we still want to have action points left to shoot them. So without Marathoner, you will see that you will have to start off fights with manual shots, which can really, it can damage the flow of your build a little. And in Forza, I said it earlier, it's definitely useful when you're going against enemies that are tougher, or bigger groups of ghouls shoot their legs and they are basically useless. And on to luck, lastly. Four Leaf Clover, this is the perk I told you, so it doesn't tell which chance you do have to fill your critical meter, but as you saw earlier, at the least, like, I'd say every shot you take will refill your critical meter, and if it doesn't, the next one does. So this is pretty much a centerpiece of our build. This perk here makes it so we can always use our criticals. On to the next perk here, it's Starch Genes. I don't have to explain anything here, we want to keep our mutations simple as that. And better criticals, so this is about 50-50. You could arguably use Bloody Mess, which will boost every damage you do, but I felt like the better criticals, especially in combination with the better criticals legendary effect on our weapon, really makes it so that this weapon can shine and specializes a bit more. As I said though, arguably, if you see in your gameplay that you are not using the criticals all that much, you can easily go for Bloody Mess. It wouldn't be a bad choice either. Last thing I'm going to show off here is legendary perks, but to be honest, it's nothing special here. So the legendary Perception I already told you about earlier. Master Infiltrator at rank 1, it's just a convenience, I'm sure you heard about it now, so it doesn't really alter our gameplay in any way. Same for Ammo Factory. The only things that affect our build are Far-Flung Fireworks, with give us a 10% chance to make enemies explode when we kill them with our shotgun. I'm not even sure from the top of my head if it procced during the video. It's kind of rare that it procs, but it's fun. If you're going against hordes of ghouls, it can even be somewhat beneficial, but it's more for the flavor of the build, to be honest. Funky Dots and Sizzling Style. Rank 1 of each will already significantly improve your survivability. So we do run with a full set of robot armor, so we do get the effects, and the extra poison resistance and fire resistance comes in handy when we're fighting things like floaters or Mirelurk Kings and Mirelurk Queens. This can really help us out a little and just may give us the extra few seconds to use a Stimpack effectively. Anyways, the last thing I'm going to show off here, which I forgot earlier, was our mutations. Nothing special here: Adrenal Reaction, Bird Bones, Marsupial and Speed Demon. As I said during the video, a good choice would be Eagle Eyes. Definitely a good choice. It would make it so you have a little bit less carry weight, but that shouldn't be all that much of a problem. We can use pocketed armor, so we are at a fairly good 275 carry weight. I think it's 250. We are boosted by Grilled Red Stack, I think, but no, we aren't even. So yeah, the 275 is our carry weight, which is fairly solid for standard character that's not spec'd into carrying stuff. That's an order. That's okay. So taking a last look at our character here, and then we're probably going to call it a video for this day. I hope you enjoyed the build. I think it turned out very well. The styling is obviously, so the aesthetics is obviously taste, so I'm not sure if you like it, but as for the gameplay, it's really solid, it's easy to play, easy to adjust, and for those of you who struggle with the shotgunner class at the moment, I advise you to give it a shot. Definitely works. So overall, that was it from me for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and bye guys.